Good evening, guys. This is a review of your article of the week for ELA Toilets of the Future. I just wanted to go through some of the important parts of this. This is another problem and solution article, but even though it's paired with the Great Stink, it's quite different because it focuses more on a solution than the previous article about the Great Stink. The Great Stink focused a lot on explaining what the problem was. This article briefly mentions a problem, but really focuses more on the solution. So let's review, because it still is pretty much the same problem here. And I'm going to highlight this. Okay, because this is the real problem. 4.5 billion people around the world do not have access to safe sanitation. And as a result, untreated human waste ends up in food and water sources. And of course, we, from last week or before spring break, understand that when your water source is contaminated, then you are going to have some disease. Okay, so there is our problem. And then also this particular sentence is important because it's a quote from the WHO, or the World Health Organization. And we know it's a quote, even though it's not in quotation marks, because it says, according to the World Health Organization, hundreds of thousands of people die every year from diseases related to this unsafe sanitation. All right, moving right on to the next paragraph. This was one of the vocabulary words that you guys studied before you read The Great Stink, and it's not utilized until this second article when it talks about a developing country. And lots of you, even though you studied the definition, did not do well when there was a question, I noticed, about what a developing country is. And these countries are basically, in a nutshell, those that are not truly industrialized, and they may mostly still be focused on the traditional type economy, going back to your social studies vocabulary for industrial revolution. A traditional economy would be mostly agriculture and those close-knit communities. And so if you're a developing country, unfortunately, these countries, it says, tend to have high levels of poverty. Okay. And it also mentions, going back to that developing country, conventional, those typical now modern day, of course, those ones that were built in the 1800s, those sewage systems require a lot of money to build. And if you're a developing country, you have high levels of poverty, which means that you don't have a lot of money to operate, and you can't necessarily build the sewage systems that you need. So that is a problem, of course, with the poor drinking water in some countries, with the poor sanitation in the developing countries. The article then goes on and continues to say that the U.S. faces the challenges too, going back to the Great Stink. Okay, some of the United States is becoming short on water because our sewage systems are crumbling and are not being able to filter that water correctly. And if the water is not refreshed, then there becomes a lack or shortage of this water. So we know that we are going to move on to the solution section of the article because we see this question being posed to the reader. Could one of these innovative waterless toilets be the solution to the challenge of meeting the waste disposal demand? Okay, so the article offers a look at 3 different possible toilets that could help dispose of this human waste. The self-powering toilet, okay, And I'm looking here at what is the positive of this toilet versus the other toilets, and then what are some negatives of the toilet. Okay, so a positive here is that the water is filtered into clean water that can be used for watering plants, but not for drinking. So there we have a positive and a negative. Okay. But I'm looking at another pretty positive thing, that this whole process of disposal, where we end up with water that can be used for plants, is that in the process of filtering the water that is specifically usable for plants, we also are generating electricity with this toilet. So that seems to, if I could power my cell phone and have, a toilet that filtered out the nasty water and left something positive, like for using watering plants, that seems like a pretty good win-win to me. So there was our positive and positives of the self-powering toilet. Here we have the worm toilet. Okay. And I think that this toilet actually does have some pretty good advantages, but right off the bat, I think I read that there's going to be a colony of worms living somewhere, even though they might be out of sight. There's a colony of worms somewhere beneath my tush, and I have perhaps some uncomfortable thoughts that go through my mind when I think about this as a possibility. But it does say that they are out of view, so perhaps it's something that I could, I guess, learn to live with. But the worms, of course, dispose of the feces by eating it. Okay, they digest it, and so they benefit because it gives them a way to live and eat. And in the process, here's a positive: they digest the waste and they remove the harmful bacteria. So that's pretty good. And it says here that you have a mix of water, carbon dioxide, and some harmless worm poo that could be used as a fertilizer. So this is a win-win if you can get over the idea of the fact that there might be worms living beneath your toilet, which I guess in reality there really are anyway. So maybe I'm just, thinking about something that I've always chose not to think about. All right, so our last toilet, our last possible best solution for a toilet that could easily dispose of human waste is the composting toilet. And of course, we know that compost is basically fertilizer that you can use in your garden and your backyard. So in this particular scenario with this toilet, heat is the key to disposing of the waste, okay, which spurs the growth of bacteria that breaks down the waste over time. And eventually what is used will be, or left over will be, fertilizer for the garden and the backyard. However, I'm seeing some negative to this because it says be careful that some of this composting toilet fertilizer production is safe to use for growing food, but some of it is not, because we see that term not all. So that leads me to, ponder what will they do with the rest of the fertilizer that's not really safe for growing anything. Okay, so I asked in your questions that you are to answer, which of these do you think would be the best option for a possible toilet that could be in your house? And I think if you were listening closely, you were able to discern or make a decision about which one I think would be the best. But they both had some positives, or excuse me, they all three had some positives and some negatives. So I'm going to leave that up to you to just do your review and figure out which one you think would be the most efficient and the best toilet for your home. All right. Well, I hope that has helped. And if you understood it a little bit more and you need to go back and redo some of your questions, for any of the assignments. If you'll email me, I will be glad to let you redo those really quick before Friday so that we can give you the best possible grade this quarter that you can earn. Thanks, guys.